Voy a hacer yo la presentación de nuestra persona invitada, ya que es una persona externa al centro. Ella se llama Paz Ramírez-Valiente y es profesora asociada e investigadora del Departamento de Arqueología Clásica de la Universidad de Nottingham. Está interesada en la arqueología mediterránea, especialmente en el Egeo, y en el estudio de las figurillas y el arte rupestre neolítico, tema en el que se doctoró recientemente, ¿verdad? Creo que en diciembre te doctoraste, Paz.
Sí.
En enero de 2023 publicó junto con otros colegas un artículo en el European Journal of Archaeology sobre los estudios de género en el Neolítico y la Edad del Bronce, que este artículo surge a partir de un debate generado en una sesión del EA en Kiel. Desde el RR Committee vimos el artículo y consideramos que era muy interesante la perspectiva y sus contenidos y la argumentación. Y es por ello que nos pusimos en contacto con Paz, que amablemente aceptó hablarnos hoy de su investigación y del contenido, ¿no?, del artículo que incorpora la perspectiva de género en la investigación en los contenidos. Así que, Paz, te cedo la palabra y reitero las gracias por participar hoy de esta sesión. Gracias, Paz.
Gracias a ti, Marta, por invitarme y bueno, a todos los organizadores de estas lectures. He preparado esta charla en inglés, un poco por si había alguien que no era castellano parlante, así que bueno, espero que podáis entenderlo todos. Y espero que lo encontréis interesante. So for this lecture, I will first explain the recent debates and discussions in Neolithic gender in Europe. And as Marta said, we recently published a paper, and so I will speak about it a bit. And then I will focus on my own research, which, as she says, focuses on anthropomorphic figurines from Neolithic Greece. And we'll see what can be said about Neolithic gender by studying figurines, because we don't have many other data to research, particularly sex and gender. In Neolithic Greece, we have very few burials, and when we do have them, they show no differences. So anthropomorphic figurines is one of the ways to research sex and gender in Greece. But why is the Neolithic important to understand the emergence of gender in prehistory? Well, gender has long been recognized as a structuring principle in the past, but we don't know if that was so in the Neolithic. Were there any gender differences in the Neolithic? The Neolithic is a period of fundamental change in life ways, with many things, ideas, new concepts appearing for the first time. It began in different parts of Europe at different times, and although a recognizable conception of gender may or may not have appeared for the first time in the Neolithic, the prolonged nucleation of people in various group sizes must have sharpened the social perception and conceptualization of sexual differences. However, figuring out gender from all that turmoil of change is not easy, and probably the expressions of gender varied in radical ways between different communities across Europe. So in 2018, John Robb and Oliver Harris, two well-recognized specialists in archaeological theory, published a new analysis of gender in Neolithic and Bronze Age Europe. With this title, Becoming Gender in European Prehistory, Was Neolithic Gender Fundamentally Different? This was a new grand narrative in which they aimed to explain the emergence and evolution of gender in prehistoric Europe, focusing mainly on burials and iconography as evidence, including anthropomorphic figurines, as you can see on the right, of different regions in Europe, as well as rock art and statues stelae. And with this, they argued that there was a clear continental wide shift in the 3rd millennium BC between two different conceptions of gender. So gender didn't operate in the manner we often expect, with clear-cut categories of identity that can be matched to bodily difference. Neolithic gender is remarkably elusive, and that's why Robb and Harris suggested that gender emerged contextually in specific moments and was not linked to lifelong and changing identities. In the Bronze Age, by contrast, gender identifying men and women in different contexts using art, funerals, and other material culture is much more straightforward. So the authors interpreted that Neolithic gender was contextual, was under-theorized, unclear, and stable, while Bronze Age gender in Europe was binary, unchangeable, ideological, and cross-contextual. And the period between the two, that is the Chalcolithic, was an evolutionary transition towards a binary gender system. So together with another 3 colleagues, we decided to organize a session in the EAA meeting in Kiel in 2021, titled To Gender or Not to Gender, Exploring Gender Variations Through Time and Space, because we thought that this was a extreme dichotomy between two oppositions, and we share some discomfort with some of the premises of Robb and Harris' article. The main problems that we had with them was the consideration or the opposition of Neolithic contextual gender to Bronze Age binary cross-contextual gender, their understanding of the Chalcolithic as a period of transition towards a more binary gender system, the overgeneralization that they do of gender expressions within diverse communities across Europe. Gender could be subtle, contextual, and of varying importance to individual communities at different times, and not necessarily a common feature unifying Europe. And finally, another problem that we saw is that they consider gender as stable and unchanging throughout the life course of an individual. So they don't take into account how children or the elderly fit into this gender system. We consider gender intersects with other aspects of social difference, like age, social status, or ethnicity. And age particularly may be studied using the same evidence as they did, so burials and visual representations. And the results of this discussion that has been now published in the European Journal of Archaeology, we had many different case studies with many contributors that you can see here. And these studies reveal more variability in gender expressions. We find case studies where binarism is the norm, and other where there is relational gender identities or a variety of gender expressions in both the Neolithic and the Bronze Age. So we don't see a clear transition towards more binary gender. And this theory, the Robb and Harris' theory, does not fit for the whole of Europe. something important that we found is that we need to look at particular context and particular regions, but even within the same culture, we find regional and local variability. Unfortunately, the papers do not cover all the regions or all the areas of Europe because the papers selected were from the conference. But we hope to promote with this paper and these ideas to promote further research and discussions and debates about this topic. So I'll turn now to my own case study, which was also published in this journal. And this is Neolithic figurines from Greece. Let's see first if Robb and Harris' theory may explain this context, or on the contrary, we can't see the patterns that they mention. And we will also see what can figurines tell us about gender in the Neolithic, if they can tell us anything at all. So far, the interpretations regarding sex and gender of figurines have been quite essentialist interpretations, mainly pointing out that most of the representations represent female figurines, even when figurines show no sexual traits. This hasn't happened only for Greece, but all this area, including parts of the Mediterranean, of the Balkans, and the Near East, mainly influenced by the mother goddess theory, where there was a suggestion that the representation of so many female figurines meant that there was a female-related cult, and perhaps the existence of a possible matriarchy and things like that. So the study that I did, this is a very small part of my PhD, studied two regions of Neolithic Greece. One of the regions is the island of Crete. You can see here a map with all the sites where Neolithic figurines have been found. In this region, we have a total of 126 figurines, but most of them, as you can see in this table here, come from the site of Knossos, because this is the only site in Crete which was occupied throughout the Neolithic. And the second region is the region of Thessaly in northern Greece, with a total of 10 sites and 206 figurines, covering all the dates of the Neolithic. Here you have the chronology of the Neolithic period, starting around 7000 BC. In sites like Knossos, in northern Greece, we have dates around 6500 BC. And finishing in the final Neolithic, which is the period in other areas of Europe, it's called Chalcolithic, but we don't use that term for Neolithic Greece. And Neolithic figurines from Greece include a variety of representations of bodies with sexual anatomies, mainly females and males. Also ambiguously gendered bodies, which I have categorized as probably females or probably males. Figurines without sexual attributes that I have named asexual figurines, and or with attributes of both male and female sexes, which I have identified as double-sex figurines. The figurines were categorized mainly by sexual attributes into these different categories, but also taking into account gendering characteristics such as the gestures, postures, decoration, and color shown in these figurines. And these statistical results, after identifying all these figurines, show that both female and asexual figurines are very similar in number. However, female, if we count together female, together with probably female figurines, are more numerous in comparison to asexual figurines, while the number of male figurines in general is always low. There is a very small percentage of double-sex figurines. And taking into account the chronology of the figurines, in Crete, we don't have a difference between the periods. Most of the figurines were produced in the late Neolithic, so that's where most of the female and asexual figurines are found. Whereas in Thessaly, the early and middle Neolithic, as female figurines are more predominant, the same thing with males. But towards the end of the Neolithic, in the late and final Neolithic, we find that more schematic sexless images dominate the assemblage. If we want to do a transition, evolutionary transition that I'm not very comfortable with, we would see that towards the end of the Neolithic, figurines do not represent sex that commonly. This is not to say that there were no gender differences in the late Neolithic and final Neolithic, but possibly that this suggests a lack of interest in the representation of gender in the context of use of those figurines. But let's now see what do asexual figurines mean or possibly mean. So in the literature, we find different interpretations. Sexual figurines may be general representations of the human body, third genders, children or prepubescent individuals, gender fluid or clothed figurines. In general, asexual figurines are understood as lacking sexual traits, but also lacking other gendering attributes that may be associated with male and female sexes. As I said, decoration, color, postures, or gestures. A very interesting case is these Neolithic figurines from the site of Aegina in Greece. We have here asexual figurines that are these characteristic cross shape figurines, and one male on the right. Male figurines are always depicted with these kind of pointed caps that are glued to the figurine. But in some cases, we find in the same context where these holes have been found, we find these pointed caps that are removable and that sometimes are on the asexual figurine. So does this show any gender relationship similar to male figurines? Perhaps by adding the caps and removing them could mean removing their relationship with male gender. Another possibility is the context from Neolithic Knossos. Here we find the archaeological context of figurine deposition at Knossos in Crete reveal the appearance of groups of female figurines or male figurines together with smaller asexual figurines. So in this case, in the Middle Neolithic pit A, there is a male figurine together with a tiny asexual figurine measuring only 2.5 centimeters. And in the late Neolithic, particularly, figurines are deposited in groups in a small restricted area, each group from different levels in it. So in this context, A15A, we also find slightly taller female together with a small asexual, and is the same in context A9b and A11, where even the torsos of female figurines are larger than asexual figurines that are whole. Another similar case comes from the site of Platia Magula-Zarku in Thessaly. And in a late Neolithic context, inside a house was found this house model where 9 figurines were found inside in this arrangement. It contains like 3 different groups of figurines. In this corner, we can see the 2 larger figurines, a female and a male. Possibly a male because it doesn't show sexual traits, but the posture is sitting on a stool with these 4 legs, so probably representing a male. Next to them, there is a slightly smaller couple of a female and a male, and next to them, 2 tiny asexual figurines. And in the third group, in this corner, we find another 2 asexual figurines of very small size and a female figurine that's smaller than the 2 other couples. So in this context, the excavator Kostas Gallis suggested that these figurines represent a family. While we don't know the kinship relations between these members of the household, what seems clear is that the largest pair probably represented the oldest members of the family or the household, and the slightly smaller ones probably represented younger adults together with possibly their children or even babies. And in this corner, one of the group of children, perhaps of one of the 2 couples, including this female figurine that perhaps represents an adolescent. And finally, another case study that I want to include to see different expressions of gender in the Neolithic of Greece are double-sex figurines. There are only 3 of these examples from Neolithic Thessaly. They have been found in the sites of Sarliki, Magula Kuskuro, and Magula Panagu. In the literature, this type of figurines have been interpreted as possibly third genders, intersex individuals, gender crossers, gender fluid. And they always represent, in the case of Thessaly, traits of both males and females. They always represent the breasts and a phallus. It is very interesting that these figurines share with male figurines the posture sitting on a stool. You can see here 2 examples of male figurines from early and middle Neolithic sesclore represented in the same posture with these 4 legs that represent them as sitting on a stool. And not only the posture is shared with male figurines, but also in the cases of the figurine from Sarliki and from Magula Kuskuro, they share also the gesture with the hands on the thighs, which is also typical of male figurines of the same period. In the case of the figurine from Magula Panagu, it's represented with the arms to the chest, which is a typical gesture of female figurines in this case. So we can say that these figurines subsume traits of both male and female genders, but considering they share both gesture and posture with male figurines, it may represent a close gender relationship between male and double-sex figurines. it is possible that this figurine may be male, and rather than representing a double-sex figurine, the breast may be signs of old age, together with the wrinkles represented here. It is typical of male figurines to be represented with signs of old age, like paunches, sagging chest. So it could be that some of these figurines, rather than representing a different gender, could be representing males. Some of them could be interpreted as representing intersex individuals. But considering that they cluster around neighboring sites in the central plain of Thessaly, they may represent the special social or gender roles in the communities in which they have been found. Social or gender roles perhaps associated to males. And the fact that they are depicted seated may be emphasizing their inactive role for work or some kind of special social status. In conclusion, the picture that emerges suggests that figurines from late and final Neolithic Aegean do not show a clear transition towards a greater gender binarism in the Bronze Age, as posited by Robb and Harris. If anything, the pattern is the opposite. We saw that in late and final Neolithic Thessaly, at least from the point of view of figurines, we do not see more binary sex and gender represented. And in the case of Crete, we have data for the early Bronze Age that shows that the predominance of figurines is asexual. Very importantly, that sex and gender are specific to the context of figurines use. So in diversity and contextual variety, we can't overgeneralize, and we need to look at the particular context where figurines have been found to understand their meanings and to understand the differences in gender. And finally, that very significantly, the analysis of figurines' gender suggests that aspects such as age should be considered to understand possible social differences in Neolithic communities, considering the lack of sex and gender representation may be showing age differences, not only gender differences. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you find it interesting. I will be open to any questions or comments you may have. And I leave you here some of my ways to contact me. So I hope...
Espera, ahora sí, tenía el micro cerrado.